Welcome to the Monday Club in association with Find Insurance NI, your local commercial insurance broker. And today we talk about the TV debate that has dominated the headlines in the last week. Kerry, a remarkable day for the Rossies, and where Sunday's Ulster final will be won or lost. I'm Neil Loughran, and I am joined this week by Andrew Waters and Cahair. Give you your full title.
He must be cross at you.
He is, yeah. Oh dear.
Oh,
so trouble.
You'll find out later.
National insurance number, PIN number for your phone.
Absolutely.
Neil's good at giving those away.
Come back here again, I know. Yeah. In between being hacked and
how's your Twitter account going?
Yeah.
Did you get that podcast gig you were looking for?
The one in Europe.
Best of luck with that, Neil.
Absolutely,
Thanks for everybody who voted. And apologies at the same time for anybody who has subsequently been hacked as well.
Head to head.
I know. My God. Unbelievable. Anyway,
Never
what a
trust a
drama.
link from a dodgy character. Never.
I know. Well, I'm hoping that that's
links.
what the rule that most people applied here and just didn't open it because it was from me.
Ways, wouldn't it?
The man who needs no introduction beside you there, Andy, Cahair O'Kane. Obviously, Cahair's a wee bit out of breath there. He had to run back to the office and pick up one of his 50,000 pages of notes here. So
He didn't get mine.
He didn't. He left yours there.
Yeah.
He actually said to me, "Yeah, but you're all good. You're composed."
I'm composed. The only one of the 50,000 pages is any use is the one I left in the office.
Andy, obviously, we're going to be talking all things GA in a couple of minutes, but yourself, you were over at the old firm yesterday in Glasgow. Was that your first experience?
Never been to an old firm before. No. So
tell us all about
from a Celtic point of view, I suppose it was a good one to be at. No, it was a terrific atmosphere. It was actually a brilliant game. Celtic going behind and then coming back, and a special goal from Maeda. Great view of it, like the overhead kick.
Yeah, it's a cracker.
Yeah.
What was the vibe about, like, around the city, like?
I
read your colour piece. Like, there was obviously a bit of good-natured banter.
Banter. Yeah, exactly. Like, there is it. Obviously, it's very edgy, isn't it? Like, the old firm and all. But the minute we got off the bus, like, there was a woman like going, "Up down the Rangers." But so you want that? That's what you want, like,
because you were bedecked in blue.
I was obviously just wearing my.
You hadn't thought your costume design through.
I'll buy uniform. Yeah.
Wait, like what? So we were talking denim jeans here. What, blue t-shirt just or blue jumper or
a blue t-shirt and a
Rangers
blue hoodie and a blue
Rangers top. Rangers hat,
a blue bonnet. Yeah.
Face mask of Ali McCoist.
Yeah.
And how was Martin O'Neill?
Martin O'Neill was great.
Former Irish News guest speaker, of course.
Absolutely, yeah. He's got that deadpan humour, like, and obviously, it was do or die. They had to beat Rangers, so they did that. So there's that sense of relief, and then, of course, Wednesday night is away to Motherwell, which is another very difficult game. And then if they win that and Hearts beat Falkirk, then next Saturday is basically the playoff.
It shows you
the marbles.
It shows you too how much of a difference. It's probably the first time in a long time I've been tuned into the Scottish League, because normally it's just a runaway train and somebody, mostly Celtic, won it at their couch. I'd say it's the first time I've watched any of the last 6 weeks of the Scottish League, and since the last time there was a title race like this.
Even for the novelty of it.
Absolutely, Hearts
being Rangers and Celtic.
And Hearts have been the best. But the certainly the pace setters throughout the season. Like,
there will be some.
You wouldn't really. Well, Celtic fans would have an issue with this, but you wouldn't begrudge them either. Like, it would be good.
I think it would soften the blow even for Celtic fans, wouldn't it? Like, if it was Hearts and not Rangers.
Yeah,
obviously, so.
Yeah. Well, Rangers can only. Well, the Rangers are going to be third now. It was a 3-way title race now. It's just between Celtic and Hearts. So, yeah. In one fell swoop, they stayed right on Hearts' tail and finished off Rangers, like, they've lost 3 out of 3 since the split. So Danny Rose now under pressure. Meanwhile, Celtic have got real momentum going in these last 2 games. So then the cup final,
of course.
Yeah.
So you'll be back over that for that, maybe? No.
I will.
Speak to the powers that be.
Make your case. Make your pitch.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll move on to the TV debate. I know it's a week since the All Ireland draw was made, and it kind of caught fire from then, as expected that it might, if there was any big eye catching draws, which I think we can safely say that Donegal and Kerry was the one that was probably, as soon as it came out, you were going, okay, this is going to be interesting to see how it plays out. And it sort of went how we thought, I guess, in that GA Plus had the call, didn't they? They had the call on the game, and they've taken that game, which has led to a whole, I guess, resurrection of the conversation around the
It's back to Sky Sports
where
Mark II.
where we watch or and people not being able to access things on smart TVs and so forth. And I just wonder, is there anything different this time, Cahair? The fact that this is the GA's in-house channel now, and they're obviously making very, the plan you would imagine long term is that they're going to assume a lot more of these games. So where does things stand, do you think, in terms of how this will be divvied up going forward?
Well, it felt like a statement from GA Plus in terms of, I think in the past they made a bow to the pressure knowing Kerry Donegal, and even if they'd had technically first pick, they might have really put Kerry Donegal. And I suppose that was back to then the conflict of interest that existed when RT were joint partners in GA Plus. It's like, they were 50% share in this. So that was realistic. That was never going to work long term when you had the main rights holder then holding a 50% stake in the secondary rights holders business. So that breakup has probably sorted that out a wee tiny bit, but it's left now that it's a straight shootout for these games. And GA Plus were entitled to the first two picks under the terms of the contract that was kind of written for the group stage. Then the group stage changed, and RT felt that, why does that contract still apply when it's a different competition? The first round of the All-Ireland series this year is more consequential than the first round of the group stage was last year. So we should have carried Donegal, and that's where the row came out of then. That's where the two sides wanted it. The broadcast deal runs this summer and next summer. The rest of it'll end at the end of next summer. So for the next 2 years, we're just going to have to get used to this. This is the way that it is going to be. And I think GA Plus has sort of laid down a bit of a marker there, taking the game and taking the flag for it and going ahead. And it's just my thing on it. You can go through all those arguments. You can go through the money. You can go through the people having bother accessing it. And it's whether it's good for the sport, whether it's good because the GAA, they own this thing. They own this is their in-house channel. So while they make a few more coin in the short term of showing the game on GA Plus, what's the long-term impact of, like, if you look at their numbers? So they brought in €5.3 million in subscriptions last year. You break that down, you're talking in around 60 to 70,000 subscribers, depending on what each of them paid, early bird offers and stuff. BT Sport had a stat that 44% of their subscribers watch the Champions League final. Now, you would think if you're subscribing to BT Sport, you're doing it to watch the Champions League final. So if they're only hitting 44% on theirs, you take 50% of that watches Kerry Donegal. That's between 30 and 40,000 people. Even if two people watching every device, it's still only 80,000. So is that what they want? Is that what they want? 80,000 people in Ireland to see Kerry Donegal, or 100,000 people, even if it maxes out at 150,000. Like, is that what they want? Is that a good thing? So, like, the money in the short term might feel like a good thing, but like other sports, this is not the Premier League. You don't have the luxury of 8 billion people around the world to pick from that want to watch it, and you can draw in 1.8 billion of them, and that's still a massive number. It's 20%. But if you're looking at
what would they be expecting if RTE had it?
Well, this is the question. Like, if you take the 30 most watched programmes on Irish TV last year, only one was a Gaelic football match. It was the All-Ireland final, and the other was a hurling. That's wrong. There was one football match in the top 30. There were actually 5 hurling games in the top 30, and that sort of surprised me. The next football matches down were under 500,000 for the 2 All-Ireland semi-finals, just on 490,000 for Meath Donegal and 420 odd for Kerry Tyrone. So, and I think those are numbers that they probably surprised me a wee tiny bit in terms of being smaller than I would have thought they would have been. Maybe just not having looked at that list closely enough. So that feeds into that then. So if you're hitting 80, 100,000 on GA Plus, what would you have hit on TV? Would you have got 200,000? 250,000. And so then, is it worth it?
Yeah, for a first round game, albeit it's a big game, but it's not on.
But it's still
afternoon.
inconsequential in some respects. In the
yes,
in the bigger picture,
you're going to get another bite at the cherry, aren't they? But no matter what happens, you're probably not going to get that $500,000 either. So
probably not. No, I wouldn't think so. When you look at the games last year that touched those figures,
Yeah.
I don't think they could realistically expect to get $500,000 at 4 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon as well. That factors into it too. So it's just that debate as to where the GA wants this to go and what happens with the next broadcast deal. Like, are RT being pushed out the door a wee bit here? Because I'm sure if you
there is that sense, I think, at the minute, like that seems to be when you kind of read between the lines that the GA haven't set up this this venture for nothing. You know what I mean? Like, and you suspect that as the years go on, that they'll take a greater hold of it. Like that's just what you would imagine would make business sense. And like the GA will argue that they're, what is it, 83% of the profits from this go back to
but you look,
units.
I mean, you would follow, you two would both follow closely. Like, look at the impact on the numbers watching boxing once it was taken off terrestrial TV. Look at the impact on cricket. Look at the impact of most sports that aren't Premier League soccer.
If you can't see it, you can't be it, isn't it? That's the other thing. It's sort of hypothetical, but the GA taking it off RTE. You've seen county boards with a lot of their media stuff taking it away from sort of like mainstream media, haven't they, as well? I don't know.
Clubs,
trying to do everything themselves, and it sort of becomes a more and more slightly a closed shop like than it was. Certainly they don't reach out like they did to sort of traditional media. I don't know if that's particularly works that well. I mean, RTE is a great home for GA, isn't it? Like down the years, and
absolutely,
they have had a lot of terrific pundits, and it's generated a lot of debate, and
you wonder. Like I saw John Milan talking last week about he referenced the World Cup, and if the World Cup wasn't free to air, if they were showing. I'm not sure. Two of the smaller nations, but then Brazil against Argentina was you had to pay for that and that kind of thing. But the World Cup until now and in the future, hopefully, like is one of those kind of sacred cows, isn't it? It's protected. But the GA has passed that point. Like it's long past that point. But since the Sky Sports deal and that's gone on for how many years? Like 10,
over a decade now. 2013, I think. So you're talking. There are certain games within the GA stable that are still on the protected list, and that's actually one of the issues. In that, even though they've made a revival now in the last 2 seasons, the provincial finals are on the protected list, which means among their 31 games, RT have to show the 6 major provincial finals, 4 in football and 2 in hurling. So there's 6 of their 31 that they have no choice over. So if that has been in years, Dublin cakewalking by 20 points to the Leinster title, RT are still contractually obliged to show that game. The other side of that is that the All-Ireland semi-finals and finals are on that protected list as well, so they can't be taken off free-to-air TV anytime in the near future without the government making a change to that list. But it's whether then do RT want to bother with a season where they only show the 2 or 3 big games at the end of it? They miss out. Do they change their approach to the provincial championships? Do they go to GA next year and say, well, you know what, we're not going to show any of the provincial championships, we're going to take 6 of the first round All-Ireland football games? But then, I'm saying that they're sold in packages. You get X, Y, and Z game. You get X, Y, and Z game along with said game. So,
well, just going back to the provincial finals. I mean, everybody wants to watch Clifford. I mean, there was a terrific game there, wasn't there? Roscommon, Galway. Everybody wants to watch the Dubs. It's particularly now when it's become, or last year, it's become much more competitive. Obviously, Monaghan, Armagh, they still are terrific games, aren't they? Like
they are now. The last 2 years now, in fairness, but for a long time before that, outside of Ulster in the odd Connacht final. Munster and Leinster were dead ducks for 15 years there. So
but there has been a
revival, no doubt. It means that RT don't have the flexibility to say, well, we'd rather an extra game from the All Ireland series. We're contractually obliged to show this provincial final instead. We have no choice in this matter. So it's where that goes, and then do.
But what can RT do here? Like as you mentioned, the the negotiations will be coming up. Like, but what's say?
Yeah, it depends what happens. It depends partly on the GAA and how they package games, how they break them up to sell. Say they're sold, as the Premier League rights would be as well. You've package A, package B, and that's maybe your All Ireland Series games along with X, Y, or Z from the Munster Hurling Championship or whatever it is. So it depends in some ways what the GAA do in terms of breaking that up, and that'll be interesting in terms of, do they break that up again almost to say to RTE, it's not worth your while. We don't want to give you the big games. We want to keep the big games for ourselves. You can have one of the Connacht semi-finals. You're going to get your 4 provincial finals. You can have one of the Ulster semi-finals. You can have, limit what they give to RTE in those packages. Then the other side, the Virgin have any interest in coming into the market? Because they have done, their numbers are pretty strong on rugby. When they have those big rugby internationals, they've done well. They've matched RTE and beat RTE in figures for showing those, but again, then you're back to, I don't know about you two, but Virgin Media is not on our TV at home through a terrestrial signal. We don't get it.
No, right.
And you're into the whole area of geo-blocking, and my big issue around the GA should never have ever split the rights into Ireland and then worldwide. That should have been Ireland and Britain or the UK together.
Yeah.
Because they knew the implications.
Can I read out an email that we got actually from a reader on that very point? It says, "Hi, just wondering what progress is being made to prevent TG Cahair and RTE geo-blocking GA games and other Irish sports in Northern Ireland. It's very frustrating and doesn't seem to be mentioned in the media regarding these debates over free to air. I'm sick of all these rights issues. Maybe put all the games on GA Plus and use it universally. I'm a Tyrone man, originally from Donegal but based in Belfast. The same thing happens in my parents' house in Tyrone and friends in Armagh." So, how it's...
Like, I've literally been sat in grounds. I've been sat in grounds in Armagh watching a match in front of my own eyes and been told I'm not in the right country to stream it on the laptop, which is just mad. And I blame... I blame the GA for ever splitting the rights up in that way. They should never have split Ireland. They basically partitioned it when they designed those rights, because they knew the issues around IP addresses and the issues they would have in the north, and they just thought, well, we want to sell rights to Sky.
But surely that has to be a priority then when those rights are renewed.
You would think so, but
but why wouldn't it be?
Because you have the same thing with the BBC now as you had with Sky. They have the rights. They have the UK wide rights.
It's blocked down south.
So it's blocked down south on BBC. Now that's a better scenario for us than it was previously, because obviously BBC's free to air, Sky wasn't. So it's better now than it was, but there's still issues around it, and I just don't think there's ever been. That should never have been created. The GA should never have done that when they did that for Sky. They should never have created UK wide rights when they knew the issues that would create in the north.
Crazy. I'm sure there was a serious debate over that. I mean, it's beyond the pale. Quite, yeah.
Where do you see it ending, Andy? It is. It's a debate that has been kind of going on for a number of years now. And like, you always hear the discussions that people, like the older generation don't know how to, don't want to watch a match on a laptop, or they don't know, maybe have smart TVs or whatever. But then on the flip side, that you go, what is it, €90 for the year for GA Plus?
95.
€95 for the year, and you're going, well, that's not bad for what. In fact, it's good, like, for what you get if you're looking at it that way. I mean, are we guilty of kind of wanting our cake and eating it, or like, how do you see it?
There's part of that. There's also obviously there's the sort of like the parrot sort of issues, aren't there, with
the dodgy elephant in the room,
apparently, like out there, allegedly like older people have no problem using.
What are you doing now, Andy?
I'm talking even north of myself, but yeah, I mean, obviously, like the debate, it's all economics, isn't it? Like, how much money can we screw out of this?
Well, it's economics, but it is I think, as Cahair touched on, there is a like a cultural aspect to it, and what people have not just come to expect from the GA, but it's been part of the GA. Like the RTE's association with the GA as national broadcaster is long standing, so it's a it goes beyond finances in that respect, I think.
There are a lot of games on. You've got to say that. We do have like highlights programs, etc. All that. I mean, I don't think that GA coverage, I don't think it's going to die death, or young people aren't going to be able to see enough GA coverage. It's which games to see, aren't there, is a big one. You want them to watch the big games. Certainly free to air, don't you? It's got to be accessible, all that. But I can understand the debate where we've got all these games, and GA Plus is a great vehicle, money making exercise for the GA. Economics is a factor as well. And when you're looking at those figures, Cahair was saying that about the biggest viewing figures throughout the year. Well, then possibly, given that Kerry Donegal round one game, yes, it is a marquee game certainly, but it may not be the big hit that we want, as long as our flagship fixtures are protected.
It is simply a debate around, do you want eyeballs or do you want the cold hard cash in the long term? Because it runs almost contrary. The whole idea of GA Plus runs almost contrary to the GA's urbanisation strategy that it's had for the last 25 years, where it has tried to drive the game in areas where it's not been, in big urban areas. Like, if you take those games off terrestrial TV and you put them behind a paywall, the thing about whatever about paying or not paying, you take them away from the casual viewer. The person who's not that interested is definitely not going to go and seek out GA Plus and go and pay to watch it. The casual viewer is going to flick on their TV and sit down and watch RTE and say, geez, that was a decent game, might watch that again next week. And that is how you catch people. And maybe the GA feels it's maxed out on casual viewers, maybe it feels that there are no more to attract, and that now is the way to go to a paywall instead. But it just feels like it runs against a lot of what else they're doing. And that doesn't make much sense to me either.
Yeah. Okay, a couple of games that were on RTE yesterday. We'll start in Connacht and Dr. Hyde Park. Cahair, a brilliant game, like exhilarating stuff. A lot to pick out of it, I suppose, from both camps. Like Galway looked home and hosed when Damien Comer got that goal. How brilliant was it to see him back as well? Like and him and Shane Walsh, I think they got 111 between them or something, it was just great to see them back at it. But Roscommon, the way they came back, it was such a dramatic finish, and it was actually the strength of their bench nearly that swung it in the end.
They made a bit of a serious statement yesterday as well, that they could. And look, I thought they were the far better team. Yeah. For much of the game now, I looking back, they put a huge amount into the first half. Galway pressed out and Roscommon, every time Roscommon ran at them, they ran at them hard right down the middle, and could have had 4 goals, could have had 5 goals. They kept opening Galway up right down the middle. But that running game into the wind is tough on the legs, and I thought you saw that for a lot of the second half. Then I thought they struggled to recover themselves, and they didn't have the same energy. And then Galway took control of the game, and their running game was probably better than I thought it would be, largely down to Kelly McDaid, who's just phenomenal. I love watching him play. And they had put themselves in a great position then. And look, it's easy to say they should have won the game from there, because like, how do you hold on to a game now when you have the 2-point threat? I mean,
but they were so on top though. Like
they were, and even you're looking at the scoreboard with 3.5 minutes to go, and they're 3 points up.
3 points up, yeah.
And it feels like a bigger lead than it is. It feels like bigger. And then Dara Craig kicks a 2-pointer, and also it feels the size it is. Then it's back down to a point, and then the Comer is done for the 50-metre penalty. And I just wonder. Again, we can argue about those all day. The referees have eased up on them in a big way. It's nearly to be seen. And Comer did keep tackling a good wee bit, and the ball was out of play, and he sort of kept at it for a good wee second after the whistle. He claimed he didn't hear the whistle. But I just wonder how much of that is how little football he has played under the new rules and being used to those situations and the need to just get out of the way and not give away 50 metres. Because
maybe he hasn't been watching. Maybe he doesn't have a fire stick. He hasn't been watching.
So are you sympathetic to him then, or are you?
Well, I'm sympathetic to him, but I still think that I would say Sean Herson wasn't wrong either. You know, I wouldn't have any issue with the ball being brought up, because once you kind of allow that to go, you know, then you have he does that one.
A blatant breach of the rule, don't you? You've got to be seen to be enforcing the law.
And what you have then is if somebody suddenly sees Comer, you didn't hear the whistle and he got away with it. The next thing is everybody says, I didn't hear the whistle. Oh, sorry, I didn't hear the whistle there.
Yeah.
And it's like,
can't just be because you're a high profile guy who's been out for it. I know what you mean.
You know, it kind of has to be applied, and I get it. Like, I personally, I like the rule. Maybe I'm contrary that way, but it has cut out so much mess and it has sped the game up. There's no more standing in front of frees. Players are so conscious now of getting out of the way of it that it's really contributing to the game in ways that we saw the bedding in period where then the team winning the free was nearly running deliberately in to the player to look for it, and that player didn't have the smarts to get out of the way. They were still in the old mindset of, I'll stand here till he moves me, and then they're complaining to the referee. But now it's very much get out of the way. Do not give them the opportunity.
It wasn't long dropping, like that.
Absolutely. And so it has contributed, and there's going to be ones. Galway felt on the next ball that they could have had one brought up, which it was probably borderline. I wouldn't say Sean Herson was wrong either in it, but if he had given it,
it would have been hard to argue probably.
That's it. But then we're sitting here like VAR. Yesterday we watched 40 replays of it for 4.5 minutes and still not get it right. So you'll never get it exactly right. It was a big call. It was a great kick from Murtagh to win it. And then
what about Enda Smith's flick?
Lovely.
Wasn't that brilliant?
It was class.
It was class. Like real bit of ingenuity. Like.
So what are you saying? Roscommon are contenders?
I think so. Look, for them, being contenders now is a psychological thing, I think. Or do they feel that they're contenders? Do they really believe that they can go to Croke Park and take out one of the big fish in this thing? Because if they do, they've shown that they have, you know, when you have that pace, when you have a goalkeeper who's as good as the goalkeeper that they have, when you have man markers, when you have 2-point kickers, when you have goals in you, like what do Roscommon not have? What is the thing that you're looking at Roscommon and saying, well, they can't win in All Ireland because
experience and
you know, those winning on those days, like the big
and that's just needing to really go at the games when they get the opportunity. Then, you know, when they
say experience, but you know they do have a decent experience, haven't they? It's just they haven't really made that
getting to
that scalp. Like they haven't really
as a unit. Probably individually they probably have a lot of experience. As a unit, they probably don't have that much experience of winning those big games. I remember the draw with Mayo in the All Ireland quarter final. That's probably not many of that team left now, but then getting crushed in the replay.
That's right.
And that sort of thing. So it'll just be really interesting to see what they do for the rest of the summer. Now they've Tyrone, who, you know, this time last week you'd have said, maybe not the worst draw.
And
now you're looking at it and thinking,
you're looking at that pace, like every time they got, and it was just one pop pass here or there, and they were gone. You know,
they scored 2-8 against a pretty, you know, a decent wind, and it was pure power and pure running power, and they cut Galway in bits. And look, I don't want to harp on. I'm maybe looking at it through somebody who's never fully bought into this Galway thing, and I thought they were so one-dimensional for a lot of yesterday. All they had was 2 pointers in the first half, and nothing really else. And like the first ball they put in, the big roach,
it was great. It was a great goal.
A great goal. Like they put one, he fetched it and he popped it to Finner and the ball's in the back of the net, and they never kicked another one for the rest of the half. They brought him out to the middle of the field, and it was like you have Maher, you have Darcy, you have enough big men out there to deal with whatever you need to deal with out there. And it just felt like when Roscommon were, you know, squeezing out around the 2-point threat, which still couldn't, you know, Galway were 5 out of 9 on it, so they didn't deal with it that well. But it was just like, could you not turf another one in at them and see what comes off it? But they never did. So I just feel they're one-dimensional. They can't go short on their kickouts. And their kick-out press was beyond woeful in the first half. Like how
much was that down?
They let Roscommon out short 10 times with a gale force breeze at their backs.
What's the thing?
I would be genuinely cross if a team at junior club level did that. To let a team out 10 times against that one, I cannot understand how Galway allowed that to happen. And it's all right saying Porrick Joyce. The players have to see that on the pitch. Right. They have to see the pocket that Carroll keeps going to and how he's doing it. I was like, sort that out, lads. Jesus, get that sorted out. If you have to push another man up, make sure that ball goes long. That was criminal yesterday. That was kind of the foundation of all of their problems. Because Roscommon scored 2-8 the first half. I think 1-6 of it came off their own kick out. So like, that's criminal.
Andy, just like finally the scenes at the end though, like it was class. Like obviously great colour in the Hyde. Like, but for Roscommon and their potential, like I mean that's a clean sweep now. The 20s and the minors both won Connacht titles as well as the senior. Like, and for like you don't want to say like an unfashionable county, but you know that maybe haven't made that breakthrough to be talked about all the time along. You know the way we maybe talk about Galway and Mayo,
sort of in their shadow, really.
A wee bit, yeah. And you see a day like yesterday and what it means and what Mark Dowd has done, like his first year here in Roscommon and great league campaign, and then now this. Like, there has to be huge. You know, you can see the lift that it's given the whole place.
Yeah, I think it was 2 years ago. Armagh played them in the quarterfinal, was it? And really
24,
stuffed them. Yeah. Basically, like Roscommon, it seemed to be that they were sort of on the decline. They weren't really going anywhere. So for them to come back like this is excellent. Obviously, they're an established Division 1 county now as well. So and that we were talking about, Galway have loads of experience, but yet no, when you're saying those fundamentals, getting the press right, you know, when the other teams playing against the wind, you know, where's it going? So maybe that was the win there that Roscommon needed really to kick on this season, like and be a player in it.
On the Munster final front, Cahair, you spoke a bit before about like sort of what Cork might bring and how not necessarily an opportunity, but that they had to show something. And arguably they were beat by Kerry reserves to a degree. You know what I mean? Kerry without so many men, Shane Ryan, Paul Murphy, Tom O'Sullivan, Brian O'Begley, I'm sure I've pronounced that wrong, Sean O'Shea, Graham O'Sullivan, Brian, Joe O'Connor, Gavin White came on, but you know, like there's so many men missing, and even then, like Paddy Clifford was on for half, didn't look at himself and was withdrawn, but it was in the second half whenever Kerry took complete control. Like, before we would get on to Kerry, like from Cork, were you disappointed with, because they were shooting the lights out early, but they just ran out of ideas as the game wore on?
The writing was probably on the wall at half time, even though they were 13-10 up. There was a pretty strong breeze and it was 10 scores apiece. Kerry had scored 10 times and Cork had scored 10, just 3 of Cork for 2-pointers, and they both had 16 shots. And you think if you're giving Kerry that level of control against the wind, you're going to struggle to take this game away from them when they have it. And that's just how it proved. It became really comfortable for Kerry. Defensively, they had all the answers to what weren't great questions. Cork didn't really trouble them, didn't really ask a lot of them, and I think we're just scored 3 times. Cork scored 3 times in the second half, which was really disappointing from them. They just, they'd shown a wee bit in the first half. Like Cronin was playing well. They probably didn't get Chris Hogue-Jones into it as much as they'd wanted, and it just shows at this level as well. Like Stephen Sherlock's an unbelievable shooter, but if you don't have the pace to get onto your shot, if you don't have the pace to beat the man, no matter how big a 2-point threat you are, you're just going to struggle to get shots away. And that's what happened. Like, and you ended up taking rash shots. Now, look, second half, he had a shot against the one for a 2-pointer that came down off the post. Yeah. The ball went down the field and Kerry scored a goal. Now I would have cut it to 1 instead of went to 6. That was probably a big moment in the game. But from half time, certainly, when you looked at it at half time, when you looked at how the game had gone, it was very hard to see Kerry not winning it from there. And it was just how little Cork brought to them. But it also feeds in, and I know we'll talk about the Ulster final in a minute, like, but it feeds into how you play against a team like Cork. And I just think Kerry are the masters at defending the 1 point shot. When that breeze was blowing against Cork and Kerry went, right, well, they have no 2 point threat here. They're not going to kick 2 pointers into that. The way that they collapse,
2 points they got in the second half.
Yeah, the way that they collapse their defence and they keep it so tight, and their organisation, their communication, how switched on they are, like, they are absolutely brilliant at it. They do not get enough credit for how good they are, and that was so much at the All Ireland final last year. That won them a lot of that All Ireland final last year and got virtually no credit, because Donegal were a team that weren't interested in twos, and Kerry were so good at collapsing and just cutting off the ones and cutting off the goals, and they're still brilliant at it. And that is the challenge for. I suppose there's a lot to learn for both Armagh and Monaghan in that, but it's also a challenge for anybody. You're looking at Armagh down the line, and they're a team that's so good at creating ones against a team like Kerry that's so good at stopping them. You have to think, we're going to have to kick twos out over these boys in order to have any chance. If you don't have a 2 point threat, if you let them, if Kerry go in at half time in any shape and they're playing with the wind in the second half, you can nearly put your house on them.
And O'Mahony did very little wrong in some ways, even on Clifford too. Like, but just any sniff at all that he got, and he was frustrated at times in the first half because there was nothing going near him. But in the second half, he just cut loose. And I'm wondering, like with the Donegal game coming and seeing that extensive list of players who are unavailable or weren't playing yesterday's lot, and not even on the match day panel. Like, do you think there was an element from like Jack O'Connor was given out about the provincial draw being made and so forth, and it may be taken away from, or sorry, not the provincial draw, the All Ireland draw being made before the provincial final and maybe taken away from the provincial finals. But do you think he's had one eye on Donegal now? Like, if some of those guys were the borderline guys, maybe possibly could have played yesterday, do you think he was like thinking, no, you know what, we'll keep a hold of you for a couple of weeks, there's bigger fish to fry coming down the line?
Yeah, he probably was. Yeah, he's not going to risk them, and that doesn't happen now anyway. Guys getting risked. I think medical teams are so attuned nowadays, aren't they? That like guys, if there are issues,
unless there's real need, like
that they don't, because the problem with getting injured, injury prevention, etc., etc. It's just moved on. I think from you're all right, sure, on you go. Like so
you can give us 20.
Yeah, you've been dead on, but possibly that, or say probably that, like with Donegal coming down the stretch, they're at home, they want to win that game, because obviously, yes, you do get another bite at the cherry, but you don't want that. You want to go on, don't you, to the quarter? So yeah, of course he'll want that, and he's also, I mean, they have guys that are obviously bothering at the door, don't they? To get on.
Like Keith Evans was brilliant yesterday.
Yeah, when you're beating Cork, so comprehensively like that, it's a great sign, isn't it, for the panel and the strength of the panel and
what they have.
Competitiveness.
Just finishing up on this, Cahair, I guess it's hard. I mean, we had sort of said what we might talk about in here today, and one of them was where Kerry are at, but it's probably hard to really evaluate where they are on the basis of yesterday.
In some regards, as Andy says there, like, in some ways it is a great sign as well as to where they are, and that they have so much ability to cope with those losses. You can bring in, like, Armin Heinrich did well.
Yeah.
You've Tomas Kennedy did rightly. Keith Evans was very, very good. Diarmuid O'Connor back in the team.
Tony Brosnan
was brilliant when he came on. Yeah. So the fact that Tony Brosnan doesn't even start in that scenario when they have so many missing, so like they've a lot going for them there at the minute, and I suppose it's just they'll need their stronger players back to win an All Ireland, but knowing the depth that they have beneath that, if they get them fit, they're in a good enough place now, definitely.
Okay, Andy, the big one. Is this it? Anyway, no, we'll come to that. Like, obviously, Ulster finals have been a difficult place for Armagh the last number of years. Before I actually get that, I'm wondering like what the dynamic is with the rivalry with Monaghan, because obviously the Armagh Tyrone rivalry is, that was well told before the preliminary round game. The Down Armagh rivalry enjoyed a bit of a resurrection there. It was fairly quickly quashed.
I enjoyed that, yeah.
But
Couple of days.
Monaghan, what's the dynamic?
Well,
there?
Clontibret and Ballymacnab, and there is a long border between. Sure,
But is there any needle? Like, is there?
in those areas, yeah, you would get the needle, yeah. But I suppose the border doesn't help in a way like that. They're not to the northern counties. From my point of view, it would be always Armagh down, and then obviously the other side is Tyrone. Yeah, it's not the fiercest Armagh rivalry, put it like that, but it's definitely still there. Like, somebody was telling me one time, an Armagh man, he lives in Clontibret. There's no Armagh fans buried in Clontibret. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They've there is a serious
Yes.
angst down in Clontibret, or in those areas, like, for their neighbours, of course.
And what's the feeling like? Because this is an unusual one compared to the last couple that Derry have come into, that Armagh have come into, because like Donegal maybe would have been slight favourites in both the last couple of Ulster finals, maybe Derry as well when they played Armagh. Whereas going in this time as such overwhelming favourites is new territory a bit. But this is such an experienced group, like, that you would have to think that they are well able to handle that.
Well, they should be, but then there would be, like, people would always say Armagh don't make great favourites, like, or they find a way. But like, the number one on the three finals that have gone before, two by penalties, one by extra time. They couldn't really have come closer, could they? I mean, so they're going to be driven by that, aren't they? That surely that would any sort of complacency, or we just have to show up, surely should be eradicated by the thought of what's gone before. And they are on merit. They are rightly favourites. But I would have to say that, coming up, they beat Fermanagh, basically blew them away. By half time that game was over. And that's a Fermanagh side that was relegated to Division 4. Also down, coming out of Division 3, yes, but we'll have to give them kudos for what they'd done against Donegal, and they just didn't produce at all after the first 15 minutes. So two sort of fairly sort of comfortable victories, or
is that a good thing, or
I don't necessarily. It's hard to know, isn't it? I mean, that's what people are saying. You haven't been tested. You needed a good test.
Tested them, didn't they? Like, I suppose that was a while ago now. Like, but
but they're all merit, shooting the lights out. Everybody's scoring. Loads of confidence. But they're coming up against a Monaghan side that that has been through the ringer against Derry, and they have players in there like Conor McCarthy, guys that are, Lavelle, who's, really finding their fitness. Conor McCarthy kicked the sweetest two-pointer you'd have seen, didn't he, against Derry in the second half there. So Monaghan are not without a threat, certainly not.
No. Cahair, what do you think? Like, Monaghan will have obviously watched Armagh against Down the day after their own semi-final, and there's a lot to take away from that, from their perspective. Is there anything you think that they might change, or any adaptations that they'll make for Armagh? Will Bobby McCall start, for example, or what will they do, because they're obviously facing a side that's in peak form?
I think Bobby McCall will start. I think he will. When you look at add it all up, I think he maybe comes in for Lewis Kelly, and Carl Gallagher goes to midfield. And Bobby McCall goes inside from where he can come out and try. And I think he just made such a difference. Obviously, the impactful moments of in round the goal were obvious, but even in terms of giving Rory Beggan something else to hit as well, when he came out, he sort of broke Derry's press up a wee bit. He made it harder for Derry to squeeze it in. So I think he probably has to start, because you want, like, Monaghan will have looked at the Down game and they'll think, right, well, the very first thing is we can't let Blaine Hughes win 95% of his kickouts again, so we have to be better than Down were. At that, we have to force him long, because if we force him long, we'll feel, if you bring McCauley into it, if you have McCarville, if you have Gallagher, if you have Desi Ward, you know, if you bring Andrew Woods out, you have enough there.
Yeah. If it is scrap, if Blaine Hughes has to wallop that ball, then you're definitely you're going into Monaghan sort of wheelhouse there, aren't you? With McCarville coming
It
through.
gives them a big
without a doubt.
chance. Like,
yeah, it is a battle then. Like.
Yeah, and that's back to, you know, Galway and Roscommon, and just, you know, putting everything in to force them long. Just if you have to put 5 in the full forward line and 3 in the half forward line, and leave yourself so exposed out the back. Again, this is us saying this now, but the problem with leaving yourself exposed out the back is Armagh are absolutely ruthless. If anybody leaves themselves exposed, it's going to sound really sad now, but
well used to it.
of their, like, take that first half against Down.
We need a wee bit of a jingle for this.
We do.
Here's sad corner.
Here's sad corner.
Loser corner.
maybe a new sponsor.
Don't tell the fighting insurance lads that.
No. You're doing a great job.
20 of their 22 attacks in the first half against Down, 10 of them lasted less than 30 seconds. Like, they just go.
Yes.
Their 2 goals, they turned the ball over on Murdoch in midfield. The ball was in the net after 13 seconds. From Blaine Hughes' tee to the ball being in the net was 11 seconds on Darragh McMullen's goal. Like, when they spot the gap, they are going straight through it. And you're talking about how do Monaghan. So I think Monaghan have to take a gamble here on Armagh not being mad about 2 pointers, on Oisin and Neil not starting. And I actually think, obviously Armagh think that way, and I wonder, does Oisin and Neil start here? Because
they're second guessing what Monaghan are second guessing.
Because he brings such a 2-point threat. And I'm just looking at, if you're playing against Armagh at the minute, when they're getting off 40 plus shots in every game, they're just maxing out. They're just like running relentlessly at the middle, creating a shot, and then back to what Kerry do. So Kerry just collapse, and they make that area so congested. They make it so much harder to get to get shots off, because they play it against, you know, when they're playing with the breeze, it is when they collapse like that. And because there is no 2-point threat. So if Armagh don't carry a 2-point threat into the game, I think the obvious thing for any opposition to do is just collapse and play like that and try and cut off their 1-point shots as much as you can in there. And I think that's the way Monaghan nearly have to go. Because if you leave them the gaps and the spaces in behind, there's no two ways about it. They are going to get into them. They're so good at getting into them. You watch their main players. Like, I studied Oisin Connolly during that first half, and like, his change of direction, how fast he can change, swivel his hips and go off the left foot onto the right foot, back onto the left foot. Defenders' feet are all over the place. They're falling over themselves. And it's the power in the legs, and he's obviously worked on that change of direction. Like, and that is, in those situations where you're exposed, that is almost impossible to defend against somebody who's so good at it. And I watched.
Was some of that, just to interrupt, but it was some of that in the second half against Down as well, and Down that
was all
Down
first half.
All right,
That was all first half. Like, and I didn't even bother watching the second half because the game was over. That's you know what I mean. The damage was the first half.
Yeah.
But like, Jarly O'Byrne's is so good at it. Conor Turbott's so good at it. Andrew Murnan's so good at it. Their change of direction in those tight spaces where they can push from right to left or left to right so quickly is phenomenal.
And people talk about the fist passing as well, but like the amount of times that the fist pass, you know, rather than take a shot off maybe a wicker foot or whatever, they'll just
that's a tactic, because you lose momentum when you stop.
Absolutely, yeah.
And you're just going, Jolly Oaks. He's 4 points a game now, isn't he? Like,
if they're 42 shots against Down, they
but
take a single one off their weak foot. Like,
but McMullen has brought so much to that Armagh side as well, and Thomas McCormick maybe to a lesser extent, haven't they? You know, such pace and what you're talking about there, so that directness, like, you know, just bang up the field, and before you know it, the ball's in the net.
You're watching them, and so sometimes that can direct. If you run into traps, if you're directness, you just run into areas where you shouldn't run into. But it is their change of direction and their decision making, as I said, like 42 shots and none off a weaker foot. Yeah. If their change of direction takes them onto their left, onto their weaker side, they just fist the ball over the bar. Yeah. They've done the hard work. They're not going to take a mad shot off their weaker foot, so they just fist it over the bar. So their decision making in those areas is very, very good. And so, like, you're watching. So obviously Connery in some ways is similar to Paddy Clifford in terms of the role that he plays. Different player, obviously, but But just how Cork went about it from the very first whistle, like Maurice Shanley was as far from me to Andy off him from the first whistle till he went off at half time. Paddy Clifford had virtually no influence in the first half. And I think, regardless of anybody else, Monaghan have to push Ryan O'Toole onto Connacht and make him do that man marking job. Not 5 yards deep of him, not 10 yards deep, not worrying about being cut. Because if you don't get in his face, you're allowing him those directional changes. Once he runs at you,
I was thinking they might have put O'Hanlon on him after he did such a good job with Conor Doherty, that pace. But then, obviously, then you're sacrificing him.
I don't think O'Hanlon's a good enough defender. Yeah, I think you need an out-and-out defender.
But his pace is going to really worry Ryan O'Toole, isn't it?
O'Toole's quick. O'Toole's pretty quick, and it's nearly the defensive knowledge and experience that O'Toole has as to dealing with those things, but. And he's an aggressive wee bull, O'Toole. He'll get up. Oh
yes,
Connody's grill.
He's a terrific defender. I'm not.
No. So I see your point in terms of O'Hanlon for pace on Connolly, but I just think I think you have to be so good defensively on Connolly that you can't be muddling your feet up, or you can't be, and also.
And like Monaghan aren't going to want to lose Stephen O'Hanlon. You know what I mean? In that, in terms of as a
having to do that job all day.
Because as you say, you're essentially sacrificing somebody to say, right, you're on him, and that's
as a total full-time job. And you're looking at, Dylan Byrne looks like he has the physical capacity for something like that, but I think he's just too green, at this stage to put him in and say, you go and you dog Connacht for the day. I think they have to do it. I think it has to be O'Toole that does it. And it has to be everywhere. If he goes to the toilet, you follow him. Job and
so will Lavelle go on Turbot then, for example?
Lavelle probably goes on Turbot, yep, and then Byrne goes on McConville. I would think that's the way I would match it up at the minute.
And what will Armagh do with Micheál Bannigan? Do you think then we saw the influence that he had against Derry?
It'd be interesting because again, just doing their matchups and. I think Armagh will be happy enough with Tiernan Kelly on him. I think Tiernan Kelly will go on him and allows Tiernan Kelly to hold the middle a wee bit. Now, Bannigan's a very clever player. He's so good at timing a run. So good. You look at his point after the goal that he got against Derry. He just instinctively knew where to go and where to be, and his timing of his runs is first class. So, and then because there's other natural profiles that fit other players, I think Peter McGrain probably goes to Conor McCarthy. I think Joe McElroy goes in and Andrew Woods, and they move things about a wee bit. And Paddy Burns then goes on Stephen Mooney, and Aaron Mackay takes Bobby McCall, and Jarly Og ends up on Stephen O'Hanlon then. I think that's the way I have it lined up at the minute. Yeah. And that Jarly Og O'Hanlon battle will be very interesting because that'll test O'Hanlon defensively in a big way if he ends up.
It'll test Jarly Og too, in fairness.
It will, absolutely. But
that could really swing the balance, that one there.
Yeah, it could be a big battle in the game if that's what it ends up being.
Yeah.
And
it's so funny. Every those matchups are brilliant. But so much has to go right for Monaghan, doesn't it? Basically everything has to go right. They've got to put the clamp on that bunch and break Armagh are doing, make them kick long. The breaks have got to go their way. They've got to have that bit of luck around, and then they're going to have need these young lads like Bobby McCall, like Dylan Byrne, really to stand up and Mooney there and up front to really have the game of their lives.
Because when you look at the Derry game and the ease with which Derry cut through them and the amount of chances Derry's 3 goals were training goals nearly, you know what I mean? And they had other opportunities like that.
Maybe that will help them.
I think they'll be. I think that if there's lessons
and that's why I'm saying about Monaghan's defensive shape. If they defend in the shape that they defended against Derry, they could get burned. Yeah. I think they have to sit in off a wee bit and take it that Armagh aren't going to go mad on twos, because it's not like a tap either. You can't go from not bothering about twos really all year to just on this go out in the Ulster final and kick a ball with twos. Maybe you can, obviously Kerry did in the All-Ireland final last year, but it's a risk, to go out and start kicking at twos and you might kick 3 out of 10 and then your half of the wind is gone to you, and then you're in trouble. So I think Monaghan nearly have to take a calculated risk and almost force Armagh to kick for twos and not give them the ones, because Armagh are like the devil's advocate to everything else that's happening in football, where everybody's looking about twos. Armagh are just creating so many ones that they don't need them. They don't care about them. They're kicking 42 shots a game, and you're kicking what they score the last day? 333. With it, and did they kick 2 pointers? It was one or
two.
two.
O'Neill's kicked one, and then I think Darragh McMullen maybe 3.
So nothing significant in that, So
and a couple of those when the game was dead and buried. You know what I mean? So you're right. Like, I mean, they won the game on their
ones and goals,
on their ones and their goals. Yeah.
And so if Monaghan cut off the ones and give Armagh a 2-point shot, just be interested to see how it turns out, because they have to try something. If they defend the way they defend against Derry, they're going to get beat. So they have to try something, and it's what that something is.
Andy, before we wrap up, can I just ask, we hear so much about what winning an Ulster title means to the players, and we've had Stephen Campbell in here before, and he's spoken about, I guess because they've had so many near misses, as you referenced earlier on. Within the county, is there that same longing? Like Kieran McGeeney sort of spoke last week about, it's all eyes are still on the All Ireland sort of thing. Like, but I mean, within the county, is there that longing? Do you think, like, it's 2008 since Armagh won Ulster?
I wouldn't say it's quite where it was. I can remember 1999 when there was being beat down again. That they hadn't won it since 82, and you would think it would be like Ulster final fever. Then again, obviously they've been to the last 4 finals, so that's not
and they've won All Ireland.
So no, maybe not fever pitch like yesteryear, but as we go along, I mean, it's going to be a sellout, full house, isn't it? That tells its own story. So. Yeah,
it always is with Armagh. It always is with Armagh.
But being at home as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
As the week goes on, like the crack will get going.
All right, and Cahair, you've got a public service announcement for us here on the Fantasy League front that we're all going to be part of, and anybody who wants to join.
Is there any money for the?
No, Paul wouldn't put any up.
Oh,
free coffee,
free Carvery dinner at the
Canal Court.
In the Canal Court.
Races Hotel.
It's a fun. I look. The Dungannon Hurling Club run a fantasy Gaelic every year, and it's very good. I've actually done it this last few years and failed miserably at it. So nearly
you're one of these ghost ship guys who picks a team and then sort of forgets about it until like week 6.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. That's me. And do fantasy Premier League every year and never change it after week 1 and finish bottom of the league. So we'll put the details out on social media over the next few days, but it's free. Well, it's not free. You pay to join up, and the money goes to the Dungannon Hurling Club. It's their fundraiser. It's very well run. And
when does it
it starts with the All Ireland series. So the first round of games on the 23rd of May. So you have to have your team picked by Friday the 22nd, and then you can join our mini league. The details you'll find on social media and maybe in print as well. We'll put those details up, and anybody wants to join the league and take us on and see, can you beat any of us in Fantasy League?
Good luck with that.
Good stuff. Get thinking.
So there we go.
Paul's going without David Clifford again.
Jason Foley.
Good luck.
3 Jason Foleys in his team.
Okay, that just about wraps us up for this week. Thank you very much, Cahair and Andy, as always. And thank you to our sponsors, Find Insurance NI, your local commercial insurance broker. We will be back next week. Remember to like and subscribe wherever you watch or listen to this podcast, and we will see you then.